Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Lifetime Legacy Lawyer podcast. I'm Thomas Vick, joined by our co-host, Seth Wilson. Seth, how's it going today?
Thomas, doing great. It is a little snowy outside and icy, so we start to feel December rolling in here, getting excited about Christmas time and all of that coming to reality much quicker than probably I was quite ready for. But it's a lot of fun to see the seasons change.
Yeah, well, I think sometime this weekend, my family's going to come up close to your way and go check out the Carmel Christmas market and see what the fuss is all about up there and see. We've never done it before, so we're going to do that and go ice skating and all that kind of stuff. So it's
Oh, that's awesome.
definitely time for the Christmas spirit.
Yeah, that'll be fun to get out. They do a good job over there every year, and it's quite the thing. So that's if you're in Central Indiana, make sure you get over there and take a look at what they're doing for the Christmas market. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that we talked about last week was what are some things that you need to be doing towards the end of the year, and we kind of focused on businesses and what do they need to do as far as getting ready for tax season, closing their books, that kind of thing. But it also is an opportunity to think about estate planning and whether you have all of your affairs in order or if you need to revise them, take a second look at your estate plans and see if we need to do something different than what we've done in the past. And one of the topics is sort of on that point in the blog digest this week. It's do-it-yourself wills. What kind of costly mistakes can occur if you have a do-it-yourself will? And by a do-it-yourself will, I mean, one of those wills that you can get off of an online website and you can print it off and it may have everything that you want in there, but it may not. So there are some pitfalls that we should be wary of. And that's what the blog digest is all about on viclaw.org this week. Let me just ask you, Seth, what are the pitfalls to a do-it-yourself will?
Well, it's funny because the answer I always give to that question is, why use you when I could use LegalZoom or whatever it is, um, or go to the office supply store and download the software, whatever it is, always comes down to proper execution of that will. Is it proper? Is it legal? Is it valid? Is it binding? And unfortunately, a lot of times with these kits, that's the gap that we see is that it's not properly executed. The actual terms of the will, the desire, and the intent of the estate planning person at that point is fine. It says everything it should say, but it's not valid because it wasn't signed and witnessed properly. And so you'll see there was a statement, I think, in the blog digest that talked about the number of estates, probate estates, that face an extended experience because they're trying to figure out what that will is. And I've even had several in my offices over the years that we've had to go try to find the witnesses who actually witnessed because we didn't have a self-proving clause, for example. And so you risk those witnesses passing on and therefore not being able to testify that they were present and saw the will maker do apply their signature and all the things that those formalities require. And so that's the biggest one I think I see. How about you?
Yeah, I agree with you. And that stat in the blog is that over 38,000 families, according to Cooperative Legal Services, face extended probate issues because of a poorly prepared do-it-yourself will. And I have seen the same thing in my practice where a will is not properly executed. I still, in the one specific instance that I'm thinking of, I we were able to probate the will properly after we got affidavits of the witnesses. Fortunately, they were neighbors of this individual who passed away, and so we were able to, ask, a relative to go knock on the door and get affidavits signed by the witnesses to the will. But that's what's critical is like if you don't properly execute it, then you can have a nice shiny document, and then when you go submit it to the court's going to be looking at the legal execution requirements to make sure that that's a valid will. And if you don't have that, the court's not going to accept the will, and it might be that the individual dies without a will, or if that's not the case, then he'll die with a will that he didn't want anymore, which may be even a worse result. And it can cause a lot of problems in families and delays in probate issues and all that kind of stuff. It would be subject, to will contests, for instance. And, in Indiana, when a will is probated, an individual has, 3 months in which to file a claim against it or to contest the will. And so lots of hairy issues can come out of a do-it-yourself will, and that's why it's best to have somebody who is a qualified attorney or paralegal to be able to watch that will execution ceremony, supervise it, and make sure everything is done properly.
Yeah, in from that standpoint, obviously it's our responsibility to make sure that the document is executed. So you come back against the lawyer if it's not done, right? So
Yeah.
we obviously take that very seriously, in making sure that's done. But it's also just that unnecessary challenge to your loved ones, so that what you thought might be a straightforward, simple process in an already difficult time when you're mourning the loss of a loved one, now you've got these sort of technical rule violations that you have to overcome. And it can add additional delay, it can add additional costs because you mentioned going to find the witnesses. You got time associated with that. You have to draft up the affidavits, you have to talk to them and essentially redo the signing ceremony that was done the first time. And what if they don't remember? And so maybe you spent a lot of time trying to get that will validated, but it ends up in the same situation where now you're under rules of intestate succession. Well, then now maybe you have to do a beneficiary search because you got to determine who's alive, who's not alive, what are the degrees of kinship, and those kind of things. So it can be a real challenge as you're looking through that can really be avoided by setting it up the right way. It's often, when I try to do a home improvement project, it's almost always better for me to hire someone who is experienced with whatever I'm trying to accomplish, because in the long run, it's going to be cheaper in terms of the time cost and the financial cost and the headache and stress that it's going to cause on me and probably my family
Yeah.
as I'm trying to do something that I'm not really qualified to do.
Yeah, and I understand that people want to save money, and I think that the article does a good job of bringing out just kind of what the cost really can be. If you have a $35 will that you got online, that saves money now, but if it's not executed properly, then you're going to have perhaps a contested estate, at which point in time there's going to be a whole lot more than $35 of attorney fees. In the article, it says that in a stake, that's worth $160,000, you could have 10% of that could be consumed by attorney fees. So $16,000 of attorney fees. And I've said it before that really the only people who win in contested estates are the attorneys. Take joy in that, really, but as more arguments are made, as people just continue to not come to an agreement on how things are to be handled, the more and more the attorneys charge and less the beneficiaries are able to receive. And so it can, I had a law professor that said that the real family law is estates and trusts and wills, because that's where families come to court and kind of have at it because they're dealing with money. It's never about the money, but it always is about the money. So yeah, do it yourself wills, in my opinion, they may seem great, but I think they're short sighted because the online will can't necessarily foresee, they can't guarantee you that the execution is done properly. And then they may or may not be able to deal with some of the situations that you if properly advised would make in a will.
Yeah, and there's nothing more tragic in that scenario when you think about maybe naming or nominating a guardian. to care for minor children in the event of a tragedy. And what happens if that will's invalid? Now we have a full blown guardianship proceeding. We don't know who's going to be appointed the guardian. We're going to have to present evidence. Each side is most likely going to, if it's both parents are passed and they both have living parents, then their parents are going to want to. It just could create a lot of unnecessary confusion for your children. And so I
Yeah.
think as you think about like the non-monetary aspect of this is very important to consider as well as you look at the downstream impact. And it's tough, and we understand that that's what we get trained to do, and this is what we can bring to the workplace is what we do to help our families protect themselves. And so that's what a lawyer's estate planning lawyer's job is to handle all those issues. So yeah, do it yourself wills. You do it at your own risk for sure.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. And there are obviously having an attorney do the will and or trust and the power of attorney documents and all of that. It is more expensive, but if it's done well, then you're going to save your family in the long run. And that's what I hear from clients a lot of times is that they say I could do this online, but we want to make sure that it's done right. And I think that's what is unique about your practice and my practice is we do wills and trusts for people every week, sometimes every day during a week. And so this is what we do all the time. You don't want just somebody that does side jobs from time to time to work on your plumbing, for instance, or your electricity. You want somebody that does that as their full-time job all the time. And so that's, I recommend, it doesn't have to be me or it doesn't have to be your office, but somebody that does wills and trusts on a regular basis should be the one that does your will. There are a lot of general and a lot of wonderful people that are general practitioners, but they're not in Medicaid planning on a daily basis. They're not into trust planning and special needs planning and all of those kinds of issues. And you need to have an attorney that can bring insight into those issues for you so that if you have, a fact scenario in your life that needs to be addressed, an attorney who has expertise can be able to talk you through that and have a discussion with you.
So well said. It's, again, just making sure that the actual intent of the parties is carried out and that that client is well served and ultimately has peace of mind that what they want to have happen for their family happens and with the least amount of impact as a result of their passing. So many important things there, just gave me so many examples that I've experienced in my practice of just the challenges of someone who doesn't understand the full estate planning spectrum, maybe well intentioned in trying to solve this particular problem, but leaves a gap between the actual succession of a business, for example, or when you're talking about not considering a Medicaid potential in the future and planning around some of those things and actually maybe creating more of a negative situation for your family than was necessary. So just so many benefits to seeing someone who kind of focuses on that practice area. And again, it doesn't have to be us. It just make sure that you go see someone that is qualified and can take care of you and your family.
Yeah, and the barrier to speaking with one of us is it may seem daunting to a lot of people because they've never talked to an attorney. You say, I've never actually met with an attorney, right? I think that's true for me too. I've never met with an attorney for my own needs. I did my own estate plan, so I didn't have to, I just had to talk to myself. But, that can seem daunting, but we're real people. We're not going to bite your head off or anything like that. And it's pretty easy to get in contact with us. I know that you've got ways that people can book time with you. And then, on my website, you can just go to vicklaw.org. I said it every week, but vicklaw.org, and you can book a call, and it can be a phone call or it can be a Zoom call, either one. And you can reserve time on my calendar. And I don't charge for that conversation. It's just an initial consultation. Let me kind of see where we're at. and then we can have further discussions down the road. And I usually just do a flat fee basis so people know what they're getting into when they do a will with me and power of attorney documents. So there are no surprises, and that's what I think clients feel comfortable with and using me as their estate planning attorney. They know that I'm going to get charged this much. I'm comfortable with that, and he's not going to charge me more than what I signed up for.
Yeah, and that's really what it's about, right? Providing clients with good information upon which they can make informed decisions. And we try to work with folks on the pricing side, make sure that that's clear. Payments, if you need them, we want you to be protected. That's the big thing, and that's kind of priority number one. And then we figure out the financial piece. So a lot of times in litigation, we kind of say the reality is the lawyers win at that point, because that's what we do. That's how we make our living a lot of times, is through that litigation process and helping people try to navigate that. It just is what it is. You go to work and get a paycheck. So do I.
Yeah,
And that's kind of how, when we have to get involved, that's where, you've tried everything else and the lawyer has to get there. And if the lawyer can't get it done, then the judge has to get it done. And so that's what we do, is we try to help navigate. And so if we can do most of that on the front end through proactive planning, that is so much more beneficial for the family and so much easier and more economical for the estate as a whole.
yeah. And I'll add this. This kind of turns the conversation in a little bit of a different direction. But one reason why we typically recommend a trust for an individual or for a married couple is because it saves on attorney fees in the future. Yes, it's more expensive in the short term, and it takes more effort in the short term to truly use it effectively. But once that's accomplished and it's done properly, then you're going to save your family a bunch of attorney fees if you don't have to go through a probate administration. You know, a lot of times when I have a client that comes, a family member of a client, a former client who's passed away, and I tell them, you know, your loved one had a trust, so you just need an updated certification of trust. You need an EIN number. Go to the bank. If you run into problems, let me know. File the taxes, do what you need to do. It's a lot quicker and easier and not nearly as much hands-on involvement by an attorney. An attorney is available for you, but empowering your loved one through the power as trustee, it can really help out families in the future.
Yeah, very very well said, and a good argument in favor of the trust, or tilting the scale in favor of the trust. And again, we're not salespeople, right? We just try to explain options and help you and your family make an informed decision as to what's the best plan for your needs. And that's always a client decision. There's no pressure to go one direction or the other. I may argue for you that this is better for you overall, because there are factors that tilt that scale more in favor of a trust, for example, but we're never going to force you to do that which you're not comfortable with. And some people just don't like the idea of a trust, and they don't think they understand how it works, and it's just too complicated and requires too much. That's totally fine. The whole point of your estate plan is to provide you with peace of mind. So you're not thinking about it anymore. You get it off your mind, and let that happen. Let us follow up with you when there's changes to the law and those kind of things. And you can reach out anytime. Make sure that you get your questions answered, regardless of what area of law it may be.
Yeah.
Even, right? We always look to build relationships with our clients. It's not a transactional situation. So yeah, and I hope that comes through this podcast we do from an educational standpoint, just trying to help inform folks about the area of law that we really enjoy practicing in. And obviously we could talk about it for days, because that's what we do and we enjoy.
And we have.
Yeah, if we add up the hours, it'd be interesting to see how much time we've actually spent talking about estate planning. And Yet we always seem to find something, a unique spin to talk about that we haven't addressed before because every situation is unique. I've never had an estate plan where I was like, oh, that was exactly the same as this family's plan. And I've done this for almost 20 years. So it's,
Yeah, yeah, they're all a little bit different.
yeah. And that's what keeps life interesting because you get to meet people and hear their stories and hear about their families. And so that's just an enjoyable thing that I've found with my practice and grateful for that opportunity.
So, in summary, do-it-yourself wills, do you recommend?
I do not recommend a do-it-yourself will.
Neither do I.
Although
Neither
you
do
did
I.
it yourself, you were a licensed attorney when you did that, so that'll be the exception to the rule because you are a do-it-yourselfer, but you're actually qualified to do so.
There you go. There you go. Well, I already described how people can get in touch with me. How can people get in touch with you, Seth?
Our website's probably the easiest way. It's noblesvilleattorney.com, and it does have a contact page where you can fill out your information and get a time on our calendar to meet in person, by phone, Zoom. We have all the options available. And again, we're located here in the heart of Hamilton County, up in Noblesville.
All right. Well, we'll see you next time. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.